There are those in secondary. There are those in tertiary colleges and universities. There are those in MTCs. So basically we have a lot of young people in one stage of education or another. And I want to ask maybe a question that we can mull over for some minutes. So what is the purpose of education? Maybe even before we ask that, what is education? I want to define it following an example of one scholar who said, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And I want to give two examples of what ignorance can achieve. Or lack of one form of education or another. Now the year is 1998. And we have an employee of Kenya Railways. They have a coxswain or a captain who is trying to bring some cargo from Nairobi. I mean from Mombasa to Nairobi. And then because it had rained at some point, the engine could not move forward. No matter how hard they throttled it, it was stuck. It was not moving forward. So this gentleman, with all the education that he had received in life, decided that for the train to be able to move, we need to disconnect some wagons. So they teamed up a group of 3 and went and with much struggle removed a shaft which was connected to 65 wagons. And setting free like that 7 of them. And with that the train was light and lurched forward. And of course they congratulated themselves, they were successful. But let me ask you, what do you think happened to that 7 wagons? It is like this. That's why the train could not go forward. The 37 wagons started going reverse by gravity. Na hakuna jam. There is nothing to prevent those wagons from going all the way back to Mombasa. Do you see lack of wisdom, what it can do? To cut a long story short, those wagons went and big accident at one of the towns. There was a big fire and that 1 people died. Now, the railway organization had not only to pay for the damaged cargo of the clients, but also they had to pay for insurance of the lives lost. And property lost. So people of God, I want to say that sometimes we educate people to suit specific roles in the course of running life, but that education may be warped.
nyari mang'eny wakonyo mana tiego ji mondo ginyal bedo gi thuolo mar yudo kaka gikonyore e ngimagi, to kata kamano tiegruogno nyalo bedo gi ng'ikruok.
Education is not to teach people to look at things the way other people have looked at them before only, but to teach people to think objectively.
Tiegruok ok mi ji par mana gigo ma osebed kineno pile ka pile, kata kamano tiego ji nyaka mondo ginyal bedo thuolo mar neno gik moko e yo makare.
If I was to have 1 hour to give you example of stupid things which have been done by educated people, you'd probably be very surprised and most probably thinking you are any better. Same with me. Because we have taken education into our own hands and forgotten the foundation of true education. Now, let's bring ourselves to the current world as it is. What are some of the things that education has done to us? Can I have some responses? What are some of the things, great things education has achieved? Can I give an example? Medical marvels, isn't it? Medical marvels. We have a lot of things that look okay being used to treat diseases right now. About technology, that not all education is suited for our need as God's people. In fact, on the contrary, most of the education may be suited to detract you from the narrow way. And I want to substantiate what I'm saying. And I want to quote from the United Nations, Article 55 and 56 UN Charter. Ebu niambie vile umesema sasa kwa Kiswahili. You see the problem with translation, when you don't understand the language someone is translating, you're not sure they are saying what you have said, okay? It's okay, my brother. But try to be as accurate as possible. So, United Nations is a body. What does United Nations do? What is the history of United Nations? After the First World War, we have the formation of what is called League of Nations to stop the world from going into another war. And the League of Nations eventually changed itself after the Second World to what we call today United Nations Organization. League of Nations now, United Nations have arms of service to man. And whether you like it or not, these things affect you, so we'd better talk about them. So can you probably give me a few of the arms of the United Nations? Yes, my brother. United Nations Environmental Program. I think the most pernicious, thank you for mentioning that, because you will mention it as even we study the word of prophecy. So UNEP, where is its headquarters? Here in Kenya. We will show you what it is going to achieve with time. Another body? World Health Organization. Do you think it's also pernicious? We will come to find out what it's achieving so that you see the role of United Nations when I'm mentioning now a United Nations and education. Another one? Another one? UNESCO, thank you. This is the only place I'm hearing. That corner over there. The speaker is facing you direct, so I'm sure you are hearing me. A body of United Nations? Yes, sir. Madam? Anyone there? UNHCR. Can I say this in short? It spans the whole of humanity and its function. Whereas it was starting to try to bring nations together so that we don't have another war, it has transitioned itself into a body which basically is dictating the conscience of men. Now, let's listen carefully to what United Nations Charter 55 and 56 on education says. Are you ready for this? During the debate on the bill, Senator Pat McCarran, just translate that, during the debate on the bill, that is the UN Charter 55 and 56. This is what he said. The Congress of the United States, because of the power granted to it by the treaty, that is Articles 55 and 56, could enact laws, could put in place laws, listen carefully, brethren, authorizing taking over of private and parochial schools, destroying all local boards, and substitute a federal system. Maybe state takeover, yes. Congress could by law provide for censoring of all press, telegrams. Congress could utilize this power to put into effect a complete system of socialized medicine from cradle to the grave. Even legislate compulsory labor if it found that the goal of full employment required such legislation or would be served by it. Soma utafsiri ndio hiyo. Okay, let me just summarize it. This is an article of law. But listen to how daring it says. It says that by these two articles, and nobody takes time to browse this, they can actually take over all the schools and their bonds and parochial organizations and make sure that they can legislate what education can do and what labors can be forced upon you upon finalizing of the education. Okay. Have you gotten it, brethren? In great summary, is that education can be taken over to suit the requirements of the United Nations and its goals. Now people started seeing dangers in such charters. Now one writer put it this way: when the existing governments and ruling bureaus of life, decaying religious and decaying political forms of today, have lost prestige through failure and catastrophe, Okay, let me just say it. But it's good to quote because I'm speaking to young scholars and people who are looking for true education. We are told that, first of all, the political systems will lose their appeal. Religious systems will lose their appeal. Church going in America has fallen 33% in less than 14 years. In the Middle East, where we are zealotry and people were very given to religion, as a result of use of technology on them, they have lost that zeal for God. And to cut a long story short, the things that moved the hearts of men and inspired what we call loyalty and gave people something to die for. All those have been losing their appeal. And when these lose their appeal, brethren, I want you to listen, because I'm moving to a point now you will understand what hit us, because people don't know what has hit us this far. Now, when these have lost their appeal, it is a signal to them that full deconstruction has taken place. Deconstruction, that tumebomolewa, yani, in short. Okay, what is it that holds the fabric of the society together? We have three things. We have the moral fiber of the society. Kile kitu kinafanya tuvae vile tunavaa ni nini? There is morality, right? There is relationship. We obey and respect people because they have certain authority in the society. And then we have resources. Unajua, naona kama hapo nimesema kitu ya maana na watu hawajashika. I will come back to that one with a PowerPoint in the evening, God willing. But when these three things lose their force, or the force moves to one of them, because this is what has happened, we have been deconstructed. Okay, let me repeat for the purposes of understanding, so that I don't move forward and leave people behind. When the wapi in this world, when the wapi go around the world to places which have education, which don't have education, three things manage the affairs of men. The first one is relations. All the philosophers of the past have spoken great things about relations. What do we mean by relations? Tuko na wazazi, tuko na sisters, tuko na brothers, and friends. These are relationships. Ama kuna mtu anaishi bila mahusiano? Is there a person here who doesn't have a friend? We have, isn't it? That is one aspect of life you can never do away with. In fact, a person without friends must be in a medical asylum seeking kusaidiwa kichwa. There are those people, if they betray you, hata wewe unashikwa na woga. Yani nani angenifanyia hivyo? Why? Because you know you matter to them. Children know that they matter to their parents. And the parents know that they matter to their children. The same way the citizens know that they matter to their government. Now if we come to a point where that unajua hakuna mzazi ya kujali, hakuna mtu anakujali, mpendo wako akujali, bibi yako, bwana yako, nobody cares for you. Are you going to be normal? You'll have a lot of mental torture. If we go to philosophers like Freud, he says that relations is the best bearing that gives people life. I'm defining my life and your life. So we are finished with number 1. Relationship. The second one is morality. Morality in the Luo is what? Okay, there are a set of things which define human behavior. Ebu hapa naona kamete imeanza kudiscuss, mumeamua ni nini morality? Someone with a microphone? Unakimbia microphone. Okay, let's simplify it. It's what defines human behavior. There are things which we do within a moral platform, and they are defined for a given society. I went to a church in France, and the way people were dressing to me, it was a shock. But to them, it's okay. And if you go to Middle East right now, Saudi Arabia, especially in the rural areas, and then you walk with your hair visible, especially a woman, it's a serious offense. There, you know, in Kenya, when a young girl gets a job, what does she do? She moves out of her mother's house and hires a house and starts living alone, isn't it? In Middle Eastern countries, even when a young girl gets a job, even if she gets to 40 without getting married, she can never move away from her mother's house. Unatoka kwa nyumba ya mama yako ukienda kwa bwana yako. So culture is what we call morality, and cultural values define a sector of our life which we can never take away. If you don't follow what I'm saying so that you can understand where true education is coming to us, I will have lost a big deal of you. So let's start. Number 1, the first thing that defines human life, relationships. We all have relations. Kuna wanaume hapa wanashinda kulilia kwa choo msichana wamewakataa, si ni kweli? Na same thing with girls, isn't it? Mtu tu wa kutoka kwa jirani anakukataa na unakuwa, your life is like it has lost meaning. So are relationships important? Mumeona kwa TV mtu anafuata mtu anakata shingo ati kwa sababu amemkataa. Ukienda Thailand mwanaume akutafuta umkatae, unatafutanga acid unakaa nayo ukimngojea. Siku ile utamwona unapuliza kwa uso ili asipendwe na mwingine. Na haribu kabisa. This is things that happens. It's a critical thing in Thailand. Relationship, you have understood? The second one we have talked of, morals, or what we can put in other ones, values. And values can be religious in nature or cultural in nature. I want to hear culture in blue. Kimbewa. Ngumu sana. Okay. But the Luo community has some values which are cultural in nature, isn't it? Which you are to ascribe to, or you don't belong to the society. Is that clear? Now, with those two, I have no problem. How many can guess what the third one would be? And this is the most important. Now, outside of these three, there is no expression of humanity. Anyone who is willing to guess? Values or morals, then relationships, then something else which is very important. Young scholars, thank you, my brother. Thank you so much. He actually got it. I'm sure he has been up to it. Resources. If one does not provide even for his own, what should the church do with him? Tupa yeye nje, isn't it? Actually, our life, let me say this, right now, people have become crazy because of running after what? In fact, the society right now only recognizes not those who have moral values, not those, because you can buy actually morals. You can make people change what they believe in because of money. Is that true? You can change relationships because of money. Have you seen politicians having accidents with young girls all over and being open to the papers with very strange relationships? Let me address the young men here for a while. Wasichana wa siku hizi without proper true education, they can only value you on your ability to provide the comforts of life. You have to work. Whether you are going to steal the money and destroy values and morality, whether you are going to kill your friends and destroy relations, in as long as you have resources to provide for her comfort, she is going to ignore this young man who is very moral and who is committed to the relationship, and go to the dogging man who can provide resources. So if we were to divide these things into thirds in a circle, sometimes, although they are supposed to be balanced, you find that values and morality and relations suffer in the hands of resources. I used to teach young pilots and cabin crew
nasebedo ka atiego joriemb ndeke moko.
And I would see a young lady from maternity after 3 weeks.
Anyalo neno nyako moro manosea e maternity bang' wige adek.
She is back in the cabin or the cockpit.
Oduogo kendo mondo odhi mbele gi tiegruok.
Anaacha mtoto amenyonya wiki 3
Oweyo nyathi kosedhodhe kuom wige adek
because the job demands it.
nikech mane kaka tich dware.
Wamenunua mashine za kukamua maziwa wakificha.
Gisenyiewo mashinde moko minyalo nyiedho godo chak.
So what happens to the development of the brain of that child?
Ang'o matimore ne nyathino e obwongone sama obwongone dongo?
And when they have gone to work, that child will not see that mother again probably for the next 6 years properly. Anaamka, anaenda job, analala maybe in Amsterdam 2 days, anarudi nyumbani 1 day, anatoka anaenda Bangkok.
Sama koro miyo ni wuok kama to nyathine dhi romo kode kuom thuolo matin samoro biro chopo nyaka okia kata min mare.
And when their children have grown old, because I was involved in the counsel of what is happening in their families,
Sama koro nyathini dongo,
most of them become drug addicts, the dross of the society, with no bearing, because morality was sacrificed to, and relationships were sacrificed to resources.
nyithindo gi nyalo bedo ni koro gimetho, ginyalo bedo joma mera mera nikech gionge kata kuma gichiki.
Now, realizing this,
Nafwenyo ma,
I'm just back now to the crux of the matter. We find that the sacred principles of education enshrined in the life of children, where the government says that mtoto lazima apelekwe into school.
Gino masani timore ni sani sirikal owuon ema wacho ni nyathi nyaka teri sikul.
They are being sacrificed at the altar of resources in verity.
Osekawgi kendo oketgi e bwo weche mag mwandu kata gigo mantie minyalo tigo.
Now the governments of heaven, the government of heaven is calling back for conscientious people who can go back to the roots of where did we go wrong. What are the divine requirements of God on the nurturing and development of young souls for useful life into eternity? And you give me, I want to read something from the Spirit of Prophecy. And I'm going to read from Testimonies for the Church, Volume 2, page 308. Independence of one kind is praiseworthy. Independence of one kind is praiseworthy.
Geno kuom kata bedo kitimo gik moko kaka kipare en gima nigi inyalo paki kata nigi nengo.
To desire to bear your own weight and not to eat the bread of dependence is right.
Kaw thuolo mondo ikaw chimni iwuon kendo icham kuon no ma in iwuon emiloso en gima ber.
It is a noble, generous ambition that dictates the wish to be self-supporting.
En gima nigi nengo kabisa mondo wanyal konyore kendwa.
Is it clear? To tingize kidogo hivi to stretch. Can we stretch backward? Move as far back as you can. Move sidewise to the left. Enda kabisa mpaka raboni toke hapo kwa kona. The other side. As far as away as you can. Okay, let's touch our toes. That's the last one. Kila mtu ashike vidole zake za miguu. Ala. Kwani zako ziko hapo kwa magoti? Go. Let's go. Thank you so much. We can sit and proceed. Independence of one kind is praiseworthy. Independence of how many kinds? One, which is this is praiseworthy. Tunaambiwa ya kwamba to desire to bear your own weight and not to eat the bread of dependence. bread of dependence.
gombo mondo mi itim gik moko kendi mondo inyal yudo gigi in iwuon.
It is a noble, generous ambition that dictates that we should wish to be self-supporting.
En gima nigi nengo ahinya mondo wanyal gombo mondo watim gigi wakiwan.
Now, brethren, if education does not provide us opportunity to be self-supporting, then that education is warped in nature. Where did we go wrong? Let me now tell you where we went wrong. To convert people into under-socialized psychopaths, because that's who we are right now, to convert people into something that does not understand even where it is sits contextually in the society. Where do we sit? Who are we? Through the United Nations, and I have the quotations here and the charters, a system of education was mooted or generated which prepares us to be slaves. A system of education which prepares me to be a slave all the days of my life. And that is exactly what the system has done. When someone goes to school, they learn the theories of men. And they are prepared either to be servants in the systems that have been created, which again deny them the balance that we have talked about. In fact, Ellen G. White says that Satan knows if he can bring God's people to a position where they lack resources, his victory is assured. Is that a small statement? That Shetani anajua kama anaweza shika huyu kijana amweke in a position where hata chakula ni shida. Now that situation is sustained for some years. Then this guy might sacrifice his values and morality. His belief in Christ Jesus might be shaken. Do you know, see kama kuna mtu amewahi kuwa in a position where they really need money. You know that you need money, like you need it, hii si mchezo sasa, because the only, hata ukipata unaweza iba. Have you been to a situation where, yani either Mungu nipate pesa, either ni mama mtoto ni mgonjwa, pengine mzee ako pali pengine, they need to go to hospital. Hospital requires money. Whatever they require, it needs to be done now and now. And probably it's not the nature of God to answer prayers in that form. Kamfuko, you know, saa ingine ate Mungu nisaidie pesa, kamfuko katoke juu kaanguke hapo, si utakimbia? Na ulikuwa unaombea nini si ni pesa? But God has his ways of working which may not involve you. So you can find yourself into a position of real need. Now your values can be shaken. Umesikia watu wakiuliza Mungu ulikuwa wapi? Now Satan knows that if we abrogate, if we take away the need for true education and we find ourselves in such situations, our faith in God is going to be shaken. And that's why in a meeting like this, without lying to anyone, we must embrace a system of education
Nyaka wabed kod yo moro mar tiegruok
that pushes us to a balanced life of Christianity where we can provide our own resources, where we can start with our morals and values, and these are usually contextualized in religion and culture. Some of the cultural issues are not bad, I can tell you. They are good in their own way. They bring social cohesion, and also it's very important to maintain the relationships that we have, because that's how psychologically we become good citizens of heaven. Fellowship, nimesema mambo mingi, tafsiri yote.
Owacho ne kuwa biro chokruoga inagi sama koro wapuonjore weche mag tiegruok makare, nyaka wang'iyo weche adek madongo manowuoye ka, ma en weche mag kaka wanyalo konyore kendwa, weche mag kaka wanyalo bedo gi kido makare ma ok wang'ikni, kaachiel kod kaka wanyalo bedo jogo maikore ne dhi e pinyruodh polo.
Ellen G. White in the book Education, page 5, 6, and 7.
Ellen White kawo education page
I would like you to take time to look at the statements there, but I want to lift one which is very important. That education is to prepare us for a work of service in this life and in the life to come. And before we can even think about the life to come, we must seek that education that balances us. And suits us for education today. I mean for service today. I want to give one more quotation as I go towards the end of today's presentation. It is Manuscript Releases, Volume 4. MR, Volume 4, page 74. I can encourage you to read all the way to page 76. It says, the work of the people of God is to prepare for the events of the future, which will soon come upon them with a blinding force. Ebu watu wa Mungu ni posa hapo kidogo nione kama I can bring you on board on this. Okay, what works have we wrought this week? Ni kazi gani tumefanya wiki? Okay, this year ni kazi gani tumefanya? Mtumishi, ni nini na nini umefanya? Yaani unaamua kumuongelesha saa zile na muongelesha. Haya, mwingine kazi gani tumefanya hii wiki? Ama mwaka huu, what works have we done? Let me hear. Yaani hamjafanya. The Bible says 6 days shalt thou labor. If you don't labor, it's a sin. You have not obeyed the 4th commandment, so what have we done this week, this year, this month? Nini umefanya? What has occupied your time? Sitembei mbele kabla sijasikia. Unaweza kuwa hata ulipanda mti mmoja peke yake. Unaweza kuwa ulienda ukasiaga unga tukakula ugali. Unaweza kuwa hata ulienda ukapeleka kitabu kwa mtu. You actually could have ministered to people because that's an important part of our labors. But listen carefully, the work of the people of God is to prepare for the events of the future. What will happen to these events, which will come upon them with a blinding force?
gigo mabiro timore gi teko ahinya kata ka gin giwinjo ine.
Wapendwa, have you preparing for these events? You know, let me ask, blinding force, how does that look like? Is it something that you are very ready for? Who knew before Corona some of the things which have happened would have happened? And now, people of God, until and unless we are able to say this, even this meeting, we have not achieved its objective. If God's people do not understand the need to Nambia, the final movements will be very rapid ones. And people of God need to prepare. Each individual will be put in a position where the little that they did for preparation will come to count. Okay, I'm going to read from Manuscript Releases again, Volume 7. And this is not controversial, it is the truth. Manuscript Releases, Volume 7, page 196. We are not castigating anyone. And in fact, Mungu atusaidie that this pulpit should not be a place to castigate anyone but to speak the truth. Now I will give this message a certain sound on what exactly we need to do for true education. But a very critical place to begin is that we shall be called to meet those who, notwithstanding definite reproof and warning through the testimonies, have gone on in an evil course. We shall be called to meet these people. Naona translation mimi inanilemea kupeleka ujumbe ule nimebeba sana. Because maybe some of the things that we have to say, the concepts may be straightforward. Kama hata watu wachache wataelewa, mimi naomba muniruhusu niseme bila kutafsiriwa. And not because he's not capable, not because they are not capable, because of the flow of thoughts also. Ninaweza kuomba, lakini tumalizie. Mukinikubali, probably I'll be more productive. Wapendwa, it's your meeting, you make that decision, but the quotation tunaambiwa kwamba tutakutana na wale wamekataa the firm reproofs za the testimonies. Chukua powers. I'm not discouraging you. Can you speak with the confidence you had before? You're not a problem. And God is to hold, we are bidden of God to hold ourselves separate and distinct from these men. Skizani vizuri wapendwa. Who have not given heed for his warnings. For they deceive, if possible, the very elect. Mumesoma mafungu yanasema shetani atajaribu kuwadanganya hata wale walio wateule wa Mungu, si ni kweli? Hivi wapendwa, in the movement that we are in right now, tumeona kitu inaitwa spiritual formation. Umeisikia? Books of a new order have been printed. When people go, niko na transcript ya people in our colleges, Bugema, wherever else, which shows they go to do spiritual formation and the speakers are the same speakers who speak katika makundi ya wachawi in America. The weakest preachers are the ones we bring to teach us spiritual formation. while studying anti-terrorism, I came upon a course called Neurolinguistic Programming. Nani amewahi kusikia NLP? Anyone here? Hey, wapendwa. NLP is a course which is being offered in some of our universities right now. About in the book Mind, Character and Personality, Ellen G. White said this is veritable witchcraft and we should not tinker in it. This is where education has come to the value of true education. Let me briefly mention what NLP is. Tunajiweka kwa mfuko gani? Now, NLP falls into 3 broad modules. They are called Lab 1, Lab 2, Lab 3. Now, Lab 1 is simple use of language to manipulate people. I don't know whether you realize that some of the politicians hata wakifanya nini the next time bado tunawachagua, because actually they go for courses on neurolinguistic programming Lab 1. Mumeona musicians wakiimba wakifanya mwili hivi? Unaona vidole tu sinafanywa hivi. That is actually Lab 1 of NLP. Using once na kitu inaitwa the principle of iteration. The principle of iteration ni pale tunarudia maneno mpaka yanakuwa part of us. Nipeane mfano. Beleni tunaweza kuwa tunaita Pasaka the Lord's table, isn't it? Pole pole tunaanza kuita Eucharist. Beleni tulikuwa tunasema district. Kama mgawanyo wa makanisa unasikia district ya Rongo, lakini sasa unaanza kusikia inaitwa presbytery. Look at our magazines, they are there. This is Neurolinguistic Programming Lab 1. Unaingia kwa magazines zetu unakuta terminology has changed. It's more Roman now, but we don't realize that it is conditioning the mind of people to start thinking in Roman terms. Few more minutes, brethren. When Lab 1 comes to us, it is so indiscreet that we don't realize that slowly and surely our minds are formed towards the mark of the beast. Mawakili, pronunciation of words, the way they choose where to put the words. Have you heard speakers, even in our pulpits, speaking like that? Even in Aongea Momeskia. They are actually following the principle of NLP Lab 1. Briefly, Lab 2 appeals on the fact that ones carry with them emotions. Ngumu kutranslate hiyo nimesema, lakini wacha niendelee. Now, there are 2 systems which are used in Lab 2. The first one is called manipulative analysis and logical inference. MALI. Chukueni hiyo nyinyi ni wasomi. Sitakosa kuambia kitu because it's happening in our pulpits amongst our people. Manipulative analysis and logical inference is where you get a group of people, unachukua kundi la watu, unaelewa there are people ama it's a person who really loves logic. He loves when things are done. Kama niko na PowerPoint hapa nikiweka graphs, naanza kuwaonyesha the way things are. Even if it's a lie, you buy into it because in your system of thinking, you are skewed more to taking what? Logic. There are a lot of people who want just logic, whether it is what we call in philosophy, tunaweza kusema it is fallacious logic, but it's logic all the same. So, when people, tunaingia hapa tunaanza kuonyesha systems of salvation, or which we call salvic systems, and we are following neurolinguistic programming Lab 2, manipulative analysis and logical inference, we carry God's people by use of logic, which is fallacious. That is Lab 2, Module 1. Now, Lab 2, Module 2 uses a system called NOCTIS, N-O-C-T-I-S, non-conceptual thinking and intuitive sentences. There are people again in the church and wherever in the society ambao katika maisha yao wanapenda sana vitu intuitive. Mama yako anaweza kukuambia mimi sipendi yule msichana unatembea naye. If you are a mali person, utamwambia mama, ni nini upenda about this person? You want what? Logic. But although your mom or your wife cannot put a finger on what she doesn't like about this person, but intuitively, she has a feeling that God puts in her. There is that we call intuitive reasoning. It exists, brethren. And if you go to the higher schools of witchcraft, by the way, they appeal a lot to our intuition. By planting once. Now I tell people, hata ukisikia mtu anaenda counseling nowadays, please know that things are put in you ambazo zinaweza kukufanya hata ufikirie you have been sexually assaulted even when you have never been. This is how evil these systems of the world are right now. And when we train ourselves, sisi watu wa Mungu, tutakapojiweka miguuni pa Yesu, alafu tuingie katika a system of true education, which we are going to talk about, then the Lord will shield us from these demonic systems. Lab 3 is witchcraft. I've never done, but I know what is done there is not something a Christian can do. Now that is why the world is manipulated. That is why the masses are following people who are sacrificing them to the devils. People who are taking their fools so that people are crazy. Following resources that don't exist. Whereas God's world is rich, but it has been destroyed so that we lack. And as a result of that lack, zote tunaangalia Rome, where our salvation for the governments seem to come from. May God help us, watu wa Mungu, so that we can, moving forward in the little time that is left, by embracing the tenets of true education as outlined by our living master, we can be able to draw for ourselves a program so that when in the second Kings, kichwa ya punda inaanza kununuliwa mara 4. Kichwa ya punda. Sisi watu wa Mungu, we will be somewhere even with things that we can help other people with. And may the Lord help us that we can embrace this system, we and our children, and without trashing that which has been there. We don't want to come at loggerheads directly, but we want to walk with wisdom, we and our children, so that the Lord can fulfill us and prepare us for a time that is going to open upon us with what? Blinding force. Na nataka kuwaambia sisi tulioketi hapa, kama hatutakufa, yes, kama hatutakufa kabla wakati huo, we will meet this crisis. We have an opportunity to prepare. May the Lord help us. Thank you so much. My brother, pray.
Thank you so much, God, once again, for allowing us to have such wonderful words. Help us, Father, that we may contemplate about them, that they may be part of us, Lord, as we are waiting for those great things that are about to befall the world we are living in. May you help us, Lord, and give us strength, that when such time will come, we may not be found sleeping, but wide awake and ready to meet them, however much troublous time they will be. Help us, Father, to grow stronger and stronger in faith, shield us against the power of the enemy, and show us the right direction always, we pray in the mighty name of Jesus.
Amen. Thank you.